Back to Cairo 7 election 2020 coverage of the Democratic primaries tonight. Washington, one of 6 states voting. Let's look at some of the others and their results. The big prize of the night, Michigan. Joe Biden called the winner there over Bernie Sanders. In Missouri, same result. Biden a winner there. And on to Mississippi, where Biden, again, huge win. Big night for him. As I come back with Essex Porter and our special guest, and we're getting some more fine numbers right now on our state of Washington, which it's about split in the lead between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And you all have been whispering as I was doing that and really examining some of the results.
One of the things that I was looking at was results so far from King County, which seemed to have Sanders roughly 4,000, 5,000 votes ahead, but a lot of votes still to come in. Will that change the lead? Crystal, what do you think?
I think in King County, particularly Seattle, that these are votes that typically break very progressive. These are votes that, when we saw the city council races, they broke for the Democratic Socialist candidates. I think that we're going to see that carry through for Bernie Sanders in King County, driven by Seattle.
And Crystal pointed that out as I was arguing the other side, saying I think that some of the Biden voters were maybe people that were hovering and thinking, let's watch Super Tuesday and then let's get our ballots in. Ultimately, she is right, but I would say around the state where maybe we don't have quite the progressive arc of Seattle, you might see some voters that are going to be more Biden, send them in later as well. But I agree, Seattle particularly will probably swing very heavily Senator Sanders.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, given that it looks like Elizabeth Warren has about 13% of the vote right now in this state, how much do you think it hurt Sanders that she didn't endorse him as many people had expected?
You know, I think, one, it's unusual to see a candidate immediately get out and endorse someone. We saw that in this race with Klobuchar and Buttigieg, but that generally doesn't happen. And then also, this isn't as clean as all of Warren's supporters will definitely go to Sanders. As we saw with other candidates, when you looked at when their second choices were polled, they're all over the place. And so, you know, that could benefit Biden as well as Sanders. Who's to say? So, very challenging to say that Warren hurt anyone, you know, any more than any other candidate who got out.
Okay.
Yeah. What about the idea that there should be some sort of age split? Older folks maybe for Biden, younger folks maybe for Sanders. But frankly, when they're that close in some of these counties, you have to wonder if the age split actually worked out, Mark.
Well, both counties have older and younger voters as well. In the demographics for the polling we've seen in this state, you really did see younger voters for Sanders going up to older voters liking Biden, and also wealth as people's income went up, home ownership versus renters. They split sort of in the usual ways that you would predict.
Yeah, I noticed in some of your analysis that I've seen online, you noticed some places that were going for Sanders that you really didn't expect.
Eastern Washington, he was very strong there, and that was a surprise to me. You also noticed that gun voters went more for Senator Sanders, who has actually voted quite a bit with the NRA, but then military members went with Vice President Biden. It was really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Crystal, did you see some of these same sort of fascinating splits, and you get to hear a lot of things on the ground? So were there people who were surprising you that they were for Biden, or people surprising you that they were for Sanders?
There are a lot of people surprising. You know, I think that a lot of times it's easy to generalize groups and to look at things from a national perspective. But when you're down on the ground in the suburbs and rural areas, people don't always tune into every single detail that we might be paying attention to as people who are involved in this. And so a lot of times they vote more on a historical connection, what they remember of Vice President Biden, the feelings that they got from Bernie Sanders' last campaign. And so a lot of people are proceeding based off of, well, they seem like they're still continuing in the same general way. I'm going to make my decision that way. So looking at the split in the Latino community and the Black community, between younger and older voters, between suburban and city and rural voters, those are all breaking in very interesting ways in the Democratic primary, and like Marco was saying, not necessarily in ways that people would automatically assume.
So you're talking about people who are looking at it from a bit of a distance. Now let's talk about the people who are looking real close up. You know, the people who are further down the ballot perhaps, or are looking at this election as tea leaves for the future somehow, for future elections, issues and so forth. Tell us about some of those people, some of those races, some of those issues that might feel like they pull something from the results of this election.
You know, I think what you're seeing right now with Senator Sanders is a real tug of war in the Democratic Party, and I think it's very similar to what President Trump brought to the Republican Party. There are many Americans that feel disaffected and unconnected for their future, you know, economically, their debt, student debt, medical debt, and all of that. And I think both parties are having to understand what does it mean to have this base voting in your primaries and everything else. So even if Senator Sanders is not the nominee, those people are not going anywhere. And how both parties answer their questions is really critical, I think, to their future of them staying with the party.
Right, and I think there's a group of people who just want things to go back to normal.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing a lot of those people look at Joe Biden and say, you know, I remember when he was there, I just want things to go back to how they were when he was the vice president. And then there are other people saying, there is no more normal. Normal is gone. And we need some very functional, systematic, major change to change the trajectory of the way things are going, because a lot of people generally don't feel like we're moving in the right direction. It's just a matter of, do people just feel like we need to put things back to the way they were, or we need to fundamentally change where we're at?
You know, and as the results continue to come in, Biden and Sanders are separated really by maybe 0.2%, with Biden with a slight lead. In fact, as I see some numbers flash up, it looks like Sanders has actually now taken the lead by 0.1 of 1%. You know, how does this resolve when someone eventually gets the nomination? Do the rest of the folks on the other side just stay home because it was so close and they're so frustrated?
Well, I think on the Democratic side, you see a lot of people, you hear the vote blue no matter who. You hear people saying, I don't care what happens, we just need to get Trump out of office. And so I think that you're going to see most people say, well, okay, this person wasn't necessarily my first choice, but it's more important for me to get Trump out of office. And then there are some people who feel like they need to explore some more to determine whether the person who emerges really agrees with their values.
You know, 84% of Sanders voters in 2016 voted for Hillary Clinton, and that gets forgotten a lot in all this discussion. In some of the polling this week, you were seeing, when you asked who did you vote for in 2016, many people who said they voted for President Trump were picking Vice President Biden or Senator Sanders. So there is a little bit of jumping going around.
Absolutely.
You know, I was out earlier this afternoon, got a chance to talk to just a handful of voters. We have some of that video, and I'll ask our control room to let me know when they have that ready. But when voters, when I was asking voters, and these are pretty enthusiastic people because they had gone all the way from wherever they live to the county election headquarters in Renton, and they were standing in a long line. They needed to be sure they had the ballots, or they were actually just driving to help a friend cast their vote. So these were people who were enthusiastic voters who were going to vote. We have a bit of that interview ready. Let's just listen to what they were telling me. Was it tough to make a choice in the primary?
Nope, not at all. I knew exactly who I was rooting for from the beginning until now. Bernie.
What is it about Bernie for you?
Oh my gosh, so much stuff. I mean, he's just, for me, the most important part is consistency, and I feel that he has been the most consistent out of all of the other candidates.
Why did you like Biden?
He was our vice president before, and then I like his work, so that's why.
What is it about Mr. Biden for you?
Well, I think he's probably right now, as far as I can see, the best choice to defeat Trump. That's why. I mean, I don't always agree with everything he does, but at least I think it's our best choice right now going forward.
But I'll vote blue no matter what.
So vote blue no matter what, she said, even with her enthusiasm for Sanders. And I noticed Ms. Brooks there, you know, and in her longer interview, she expanded on the things she did not like about the current administration, about the way America was going and feeling to her, and it was just important to defeat Trump.
Given now we're looking at in our state a very close race between Biden and Sanders. Overall, the night is certainly breaking for Biden. Where does Sanders go from here?
I think Sanders just waits for the result. I mean, right now we're seeing very early votes that are being counted. And so as we get through tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to see ballots that landed yesterday, today be counted and get a much better picture of where the race stands in totality. We have a lot of votes left to count here. But I think no matter what, we're seeing a close race here. So he can count on a delegate split either way.
And a delegate split's not necessarily good for Sanders.
Correct. He needs to gain ground. And I think his campaign right now is exploring where he can make some significant inroads in terms of delegates from here on out.
I would also add that anything can happen, so why would you want to get out of the race?
Right.
Vice President Biden is known to at times say things that were not quite expected by anybody on the planet, and races can change on those moments. And so I think it'd be really premature for Senator Sanders to be getting out of anything, and maybe even until the convention.
Right.
No, I'm sorry,
ahead.
Essex, I'm being rude, but I heard Joe Biden addressing his crowd today in Philadelphia. He had originally planned to be in Cleveland. He was asked to cancel that gathering because of the coronavirus threat. And so it was the first thing that he brought up tonight. We can't escape that this is happening within this situation. And he immediately said that this is, he believes, a point of presidential leadership. And he said that he was going to make a speech or make a presentation about what he would do as president in the same situation. It reminded me of how Obama said, this is how I would deal with the economy before the 2008 elections. In any case, it sounded like Biden was trying to pivot away from Sanders and pivot definitively toward Trump. Is that the feeling that you got? Will he try to cut right there and say, this is this is mano a mano now?
He's certainly going to try and do that. And if I were in his position, I'm sure I would try and do that too. He wants to position himself as the presumptive nominee, the front runner, and certainly by some of the people who are endorsing him, they're reinforcing that sometimes. But this is still definitely a race, and Sanders has an enthusiastic base. He's got support in the states that are coming up, and he also has an opportunity to demonstrate leadership in what he does and how he conducts himself. And you know, there's still a story to be told here. This is not the end. We're still in the middle of it.
It's also worth adding that the virus is one of the first times in the presidential, in the 4 years of the Trump administration, where even you see his base start to look and see what's going on in the White House. So to grab that issue and try to put it in a presidential light is also a good move. And I'd be saying Senator Sanders should be doing that as well.
Absolutely.
Does this coronavirus really change the campaign? Should we be having any more of these huge campaign rallies?
You know, I think that the campaigns need to consult with public health experts, and they're certainly doing that. And I think that you saw both Biden and Sanders do the responsible thing and cancel both of their events. And so they're certainly putting health in front of, people's health and safety in front of just political needs. We see Trump doing a different thing. He still is saying that he's going to have his rallies, and he can certainly do that. We'll see how comfortable his base is with that. But I think that we're seeing that it's hard to talk your way out of this virus and what people say has a chance of becoming a pandemic. And a lot of people are seeing this now come into their communities. And it's one thing when this is far off and somewhere else and you don't really feel it. But as more companies are saying you need to work from home, people need to socially isolate, this is really hitting a lot of people close to home, and that's only going to intensify. So this is certainly going to become an important issue and a very stark area of contrast between Biden and Sanders and Trump.
And I would add as well, the rallies are a pretty obvious question. I'm not a doctor, much to my parents' chagrin, but doorbelling. I mean, if somebody is infected and goes doorbelling, they're going to go house to house and could potentially make somebody ill. You could also have phone banks where people are all in the room, and you could have, so a lot of the normal campaign functions, fundraisers, may be a thing of the past for a while.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the CNN debate coming up with no audience. That's going to be interesting to see how it affects that event.
All right. Well, this has been a great discussion tonight. I'm very glad that you both could be here.
Yeah, what wonderful guests. Thank you for helping us digest and understand the numbers, and they're going to keep on coming in. Obviously, in Essex, we're going to lean on you heavily at Cairo 7 so that we can understand these numbers.
The one thing we can say about this election, between the coronavirus, Biden's huge comeback, Sanders still fighting, it's unprecedented.
Yes.
It truly is.
And we won't be able to call it. I mean, day to day, we'll just have to total up every single one of these numbers. Now, you at home, do not forget our election coverage continues online and tonight on Cairo 7 News at 11. We will have the latest results nationwide and county by county right here in Washington State.
That'll do it from here. From all of us at Cairo 7, we will see you, of course, the next time news breaks.
Thank you so much. For Essex Porter, I'm Monique Minglav, and have a great evening.